Welcome to day 17 of the 40 Days of Strangers on the Way. Today I'm introducing you to a man that I met from the Netherlands who is also a dancer. The first male dancer that I've met. It was such a fun encounter to meet him. So let me introduce you to Sam, a wise dancer from the Netherlands. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance. Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 and 4. It's time, the stranger said to me. I see alarm clocks ringing. It is time. Time for what? I asked myself. Her statement startled me a bit. I didn't know this woman, but her words carried weight. God, am I missing something? I whispered. What is it time for? It was the last day of vacation, and I was hoping to end on a high note. I went on the trip with a deep hunger to find direction from God. He showed up in lots of fun ways, but I wondered what he wanted me to know as I began the journey home. Instead of brushing off the woman's comment, I decided to lean in. I went to a nearby prayer chapel and sprawled out on the floor. God, what do you want me to know? I wrote in my journal. What is it time for? The words came quickly and took me by surprise. It's time to dance. It's time to dance, I pondered. I knew that statement wasn't from me. It seemed to come out of nowhere. I like to dance, I thought. Maybe this is a good thing. I'm not sure if you're like me, but I've often gone to the worst case scenario in situations. When the woman said it was time, I automatically thought it was time for something bad. Or that I was missing out. Time for something good didn't really cross my mind. But I've realized in time that God has a clever way of rerouting my thinking. He's helping me jump to the best case scenario instead of the worst. As I continued to sit in the prayer chapel, I sensed God remind me of a verse in the book of Ecclesiastes. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to grieve, and a time to dance. I definitely spent a lot of time grieving. With the loss of my dad 3 years before, another wave of grief had come into my life more recently, and it caught me by surprise. During the trip, when I shared this with a friend, she said, I sense that God is restoring your wonder on this trip. The loss of your dad was a tragedy. It's okay to have the wind knocked out of your sails. I see God bringing joy back into your life. It's time to dance. Growing up, our family would spend every Sunday at my grandparents' house. Inevitably, a 70s song would come on and we'd all start dancing in the living room. My cousins and I also performed 90s dance routines for all of our aunts and uncles. I hadn't realized how much dance was a part of my childhood. It had been a thread weaving its way through the best and worst times of my life. I had just forgotten. I walked out of the prayer chapel and laced up my gym shoes. I decided to go for a hike and speak to God about the grief. How it felt like there were still thorns in my heart. How I hated that it came at random times. How confusing it was. How I felt it would never truly disappear. As I continued to speak, I started to feel incredibly sad. Then I walked to an opening on the trail that overlooked a river. It's so beautiful here, I said to God, yet I feel so sad. I turned on some worship music and laid across a hard concrete bench at the overlook. Silent tears began to roll down my face. It's time to dance. Here? On this mountain? Dancing felt like the last thing I wanted to do. I had zero energy. I felt sad and a bit mad, but on a whim, I stood up and began to move my arms, and then my legs, and on that mountaintop I danced. As I continued to move my body, I found that the movements expressed some of the emotions I held inside. My arms pushed outward into the air as I spun around. I stepped hard on the ground, stomping out some of the anger. I moved quickly and then slowly, letting the breath come back into my lungs. A song ended and I sat back down and whispered, "Thanks, God." Later, as I began to walk back down the trail, I realized that I no longer felt the same. In between the dancing and hiking, peace somehow seeped in. The negative thoughts disappeared. It almost felt like something broke off of me. Things felt lighter. I felt free. As the sun set that night, I went to one last event. Hoping to savor every moment, I ran up to the front of the auditorium to watch up close. All of a sudden, I felt intense pain in my neck. A teenage boy began to pray for me. "My neck hurts," I told him. I closed my eyes as he prayed and afterward glanced up to see his piercing blue eyes looking back at me. "I still feel some tension," I said. "Tension is good," he replied. "I'm a dancer. You need that tension." "A dancer? What are the odds? What's your name?" I asked. "My name is Sam. Are you a student here?" "Yes, I'm a dancer at the conservatory. I'm 17 years old and I'm from the Netherlands." I thanked him for praying for me and we parted ways, but I couldn't help but remember what he said. Tension is good. I'm a dancer. You need that tension. For much of life, I've been terrified of pain. I've resisted negative emotions. I've hated that I've battled with grief. But what if there really was a time to grieve? And what if there really was a time to dance? Think about exercise. As we lift weights, we only get stronger as we increase the resistance. Could life be like that too? Does the resistance have a part to play? Is overcoming the resistance actually how we grow? Does that make the dancing part so much sweeter? I'm still learning and have a lot of questions. Maybe some of this will always be a mystery. But I found it funny that God said it was time to dance and then sent a 17-year-old dancer to teach me these things. Could it be time for you to dance as well? Let's wonder. What invitation do you sense God extending to you in this season? In your life, is it a time to let yourself cry or a time to laugh? Is it a time to grieve or a time to dance? What invitation do you sense God extending to you in this season? And then let's activate. Take an inventory today of how you're actually doing and invite God into those feelings and emotions. Maybe He'll even send a dancer to remind you of something too. Take an inventory today of how you're actually doing and invite God into those feelings and emotions. If you're not sure how you're doing, which can be very possible, you can ask God, "God, could you let me know how I'm doing?" And whatever comes up, go ahead and run with it and just talk to Him about it. And then let's yield. I invite you to pray this prayer with me today. God, I align myself with the time and season you say I am in. If it is time to dance, I will partner with you to dance. If it is time to grieve, I will partner with you to grieve. I yield my body, my soul, and my spirit to you today. Amen.